everyone, welcome to the video. Today I'm going to be showing you the Luminary build that I've been running. So let's go over the build. If you want, you can pause the video right now so that you can see the gear and utility so that you can copy it. First off, we're going to do Marauder on the weapons. And then we're going to do Valkyrie for the armor. And then we're going to do a mix of Demolisher and Marauder for the accessories. One of the main issues with this build is we don't have any Fury uptime. Not a lot, at least. For the most part, we're going to be stuck at 71% crit chance with just our base crit chance and the crit chance buff we get from Resolution. This doesn't really affect our DPS too much, even with such a low crit chance, we're still able to pump out big damage. For our sigils, we're going to do Hydromancy and Doom for the sword, and then we're going to do Celerity and Doom for the spear. I always like pairing up Celerity with the spear because it really speeds up the burst of the spear when you start with the spear 5. It makes it very strong and makes the whole spear kit into like a one-shot burst. Now we have the Doom because most of our fights tend to be long against stronger classes. Classes that kite a lot, classes like Catalyst who will just try to outlive you. So we really need that poison for longer fights and just to reduce healing from people. And then with the sword, we do Hydromancy and Doom. Again, the Doom, longer fights, we want to constantly apply that poison. And the Hydromancy, you can either do Hydromancy or Sigil of Air. Sigil of Air will just add a little bit more burst, but I prefer Hydromancy. That way you chill nearby enemies so you can combo better, and when we chill, we also heal because of the trait we're running, which I'll be explaining later. For our rune, we're going to be running Brawler. This build has 2700 armor, which I think is the sweet spot for this build. I feel like anytime you have any sort of healing in a build, you need to really pair it up with a little bit of armor for it to be utilized properly. And it's just a good countermeasure for people who like to burst a lot, like Daredevil and Willbender. For our Relic, we're going to be running Demon Queen. Now, in this build, you can pretty much run a lot of different Relic. But in my opinion, I like Demon Queen because we're going the route of the Sigil of Doom anyways. So it further increases the healing. Plus, this build has decent amount of disables. So that's just a little cherry on the top that you're able to give 3 seconds of poison to people randomly at times. There's a lot of different options you can do. Some people do Weaver, Relic of Weaver, so you get 10% increased damage when you use a stance for 4 seconds. That's good for small bursts, but for this build, I'm prioritizing more on the longer fights because we don't really have that much problems with short burst fights. Now for the food, we're just going to do Power Ferocity and Power Sharpening Stone. Now onto the utility. We're going to be running Resolute Stance, Contemplation of Purity, Effulgent Stance, Piercing Stance, and Renewed Focus. Now for the traits. For the traits, we're going to do Radiance, Virtues, and Luminary. For Luminary, you want to do Sovereign of Light, Purging Light, and Shimmering Stances. For Virtues, you want to do Indomitable Courage, Glacial Heart, and Unscathed Contender. For Radiance, you want to do Righteous Instinct, Retribution, and Right Hand Strength. Now I'm going to explain to you the main gimmick of this build. The main gimmick we're going to be playing around is Sovereign of Light. Every time you gain a light aura, you can detonate that. And when you detonate that, you do 536 damage, 1300 healing, you get Resolution, and pair that up with Purging Light, it also counts as a Condi Cleanse. One Condi Cleanse. And since we're running Purging Light, that turns our healing skill into a light aura as well. Shimmering Stances gives us protection and blindness every time we use a stance. This helps us get tankier from all the other damage mitigation this class gives, which is the cherry on top and helps us become so tanky. Let me talk about our light aura access. So due to Purging Light, our heal skill is a light aura. Our heal skill is our light aura and one of our Condi cleanses. It cleanses three Condis on cast, and then for the next 5 seconds, you heal yourself when you remove conditions. And it's 325 healing per condition remove. Next up is Evulsion Stance. It's a light aura, it's a barrier, it does damage, and it's 25 seconds. This is a really strong utility skill that we have. One of the few utility skills that we can use while we're CC'd, which is great for surviving. It's such a low cooldown, it's such a big barrier, the fact that it does damage, and it has the potential to also daze. Next up, we have the F1. The F1 turns into a light aura as well. It turns into a light aura because we have Radiance. Justice is blind. One of the passives for Radiance turns our F1 into a blind and a light aura. So it has a lot of synergy because due to our Shimmering Stances, our stances already do blind, and our F1 also does blind and gives us light aura. And then our F2 also gives us light aura. Now, due to the Luminary's virtue skills being pretty much similar to Core Guardian, we really need virtues in our trait lines to make use and make our virtues more well-rounded. Indomitable Courage turns our F3 into a stab and a stun break. I chose Glacial Heart over Absolute Resolve because our F2 is already a 2 condition cleanse. If you add that, it becomes a 5 condition cleanse, which is good, but not really needed. Since our build has so many CC, I'd rather have that passive healing on top of everything. And this healing works on Disable, Immob, and Chill. The great thing about that is it's not just Disable. So Chill from our Geomancy will heal us, Immob from our Sword 5 will heal us, our Spear 5 will heal us, and then things in our Radiant Forge will heal us when we daze them. Next up is Unscathed Contender, just a little damage amp whenever we're high health. This build is really good at keeping us at a high health for the most part because of its passive healing. We don't really benefit too much from the damage increase with Aegis because we don't have that much access to Aegis, and I don't think it's worth it to change the build in order to have more Aegis just to get that extra 7% increase. And then for Radiance, just because we have Resolution a lot and we need that crit chance increase, we're going to be doing Righteous Instinct. That nets us a good 6 might on average as well, 6 to 9 might on average. Strike damage dealt when you have Resolution, because we always have Resolution. And then Right Hand Strength. In all of my other Guardian builds, I usually use Inner Fire. Inner Fire is really strong, especially on Willbender, because you're able to maintain that 3 stacks of burning passively even if you're a power build with no burning weapons. But with Luminary, we don't really have any burning resources. The only thing we have is F1, but it's not enough to uptime that Fury. If you really want to run Inner Fire and have that Fury uptime, you can if you swap the sword to pistol. Pistol's 2 ability will instantly get you Fury, plus the pistol 3 puts a symbol down that burns foes when they're on it or when you attack them. The pistol variance is decent, but not as strong as the sword. It is a good option though if you want that range and extra crit chance, but in my opinion, it's more important to be constantly on top of your enemy with a sword and spear. Now since we're done with the traits, I'll start talking about what I like about the Luminary, what got changed, how does it feel now, how is it different from the beta test, and why is it so strong. First thing I want to talk about is the changes that they made. Compared to the beta, they did a lot of changes. First of all, the virtues. The F1, F2, F3 virtues are now different. It used to be core, but now they really fit in well with the Luminary, and it feels like they are virtues made for the Luminary. The first change is with F1, we get quickness from it. So the main change they did is, after you use the virtues, the next time you use the associated weapon with them in the forge, they get a buff. So if you use the F1 and then later on you use the hammer, it gives vulnerability stacks and increased damage. For the F2, it empowers the staff to do more healing and regen. And then for the F3, it empowers the shield to give you a 2300 barrier and break stun. However, it is currently bugged. I tried so many different things to try and trigger the stun break, but it's currently bugged and it doesn't function as a stun break. So until it gets fixed, don't try to use shield as a stun break. And it also empowers the sword to have increased damage, and the immob from it was transferred to this. So back in the beta test, the 4 ability, the second part of it made you immobilize, but now it's just a projectile and a blind. Some other things they changed are from the utilities. The piercing stance just gives a flat 10% damage, when before it was increased damage to defiant enemies. And then the Valorous stance, it used to be a delayed stability and protection after a certain amount of time, I believe. But now it's instant. As soon as you use it, you get the stability, you get the protection. However, it is not a stun break. So we can't replace Valorous stance for Stand Your Ground. Stand Your Ground is still the king of stun breaks, and you can't CC me skill. So just keep that in mind. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but any of the other utility skills weren't really changed. Let me quickly talk about the Elite. The Luminary Elite is very bad in my opinion. The main part is you can actually miss it. So if you're, for example, you're blinded, you can easily miss it. And I'm not sure, but I think you can block it as well. And the thing with it is, pretty much, you create this ring, and anyone that was in the ring when you casted it, they get tethered to you. If they leave that ring, or if you are too far from them, it's kind of like Spellbreaker's tether, they get stunned for 2 seconds. The thing with that is, sometimes it's so hard for you to know when they're about to get stunned, when they're about to leave the ring. And by the time you realize they're stunned, it's really hard to follow up damage to them. Another thing is, some people will use a blink. Some people will use a blink to get away from you and then get stunned. But the thing is, since they blinked and they're far away, you can't really follow up and damage them. It's basically a budget Temu version of the Spellbreaker tether, just because at least the Spellbreaker pulls you towards him so that he can attack you. This one pretty much just stuns and that's it. So I chose Renewed Focus because I think 3 seconds of invulnerability is just so strong in any given moment in a fight. Not just because we're resetting our virtues, but just because we can't be damaged in that 3 seconds. There's a lot of bursts that you can mitigate with that 3 seconds. There's a lot of things you can do with that 3 seconds of no one can touch me. Another thing is, since our F2 is a Condi Cleanse and a Light Aura, and our F3 is a Stun Break, and our F1 is a Blind and Light Aura, it makes it very useful with a renewed focus to reset those, just in case you need a quick Condi Cleanse, another Stun Break, and things like that. That's it for most of the changes. Please let me know if I missed out any. Another thing that got changed is the flow of the Radiant Shroud. One of the main things I hated about Luminary during the beta was how slow the Forge skills felt. It felt like there was no point in me dazing someone because I couldn't follow it up with something fast. They made the Radiant Forge skills way quicker. The 2, the 3, the 4-4, and then the 5-5. It flows way better, quicker, and you can easily pop in the Forge, just do the hammer skill, pop out, and still not have any wasted time. Well, how does the burst work? We have 3 main gimmicks that we do in our rotations. First is Light Aura exploding, weapon skills, and the Forge. How the Light Aura works is, you give yourself a Light Aura, and when you use a Luminary skill, it explodes. And same thing happens if you use a Forge weapon. Use a hammer, it explodes. The best part about this is you don't have to be in the Forge to explode your Light Aura. You can use your utility skills to explode them, which is perfect. Personally, my favorite Light Aura burst would be F1 into Effulgent Stance into Piercing Stance. And then I follow it up with weapon skills or Forge. Great part about that is F1 gives us Light Aura, we use Effulgent Stance to explode it and gain a new Light Aura, and then we use Piercing Stance to explode that. And then after Piercing Stance, you have access to 10% damage for 6 seconds, and then you can do your burst. F2 as a Light Aura source should be used sparingly. It depends on the encounter whether you're against a Condi or a power. If you're against a Condi, try to use it only for Condi removal, and if you're against power, then you can be more aggressive with using it for healing and Light Aura in order to explode. Don't forget that you can also explode your Light Aura with your heal skill, and then combo that with a Piercing Stance, due to our heal skill giving us Light Aura. Now, when you enter the Forge, you instantly get a Light Aura. So you can use that to explode. You can F1, use the second part of a hammer to explode, and so on. Each flip skill of the Forge can explode an aura. So it's really up to you and situational on how you want to explode your Light Auras. If you want to do it really fast, if you want to do it fast, like go into Forge, hammer 2, F2, hammer 2, and then go out. Or if you want to have your Light Auras more spread out. Now let's quickly talk about the buffs that you get after you leave the Forge. If you leave the Forge after hammer was the last skill you used, you get 10% damage for 10 seconds. If you leave the Forge with staff, it's 15%. If you leave with a sword, it's 33%. And if you leave with the shield, it's reduced incoming strike damage. So it really depends on what you're trying to do. Early on into the fight, when I just started engaging and I'm doing my first burst, I like to go into the Forge and only use my hammer. That way the Forge will only have a 5-second cooldown and I can use all of the other abilities later. I do that just so I can make my initial burst stronger with that 10% damage. If I'm chasing someone, I would end with a sword to get that increased movement speed. And if I'm in a very long fight, I will always end with a shield. Once you're in the Forge, you don't necessarily have to use both skills. I can use a hammer and then straight into a staff and then straight into a sword. I don't have to use both of the skills. Keep that in mind because you don't want to make your fighting sluggish by constantly using both flip skills when it's not needed in the situation. Things that I like in this Luminary build is that we're very tanky, with lots of sustain, lots of Condi cleanse, lots of damage mitigation, and still have a strong burst. We have a lot of chase potential with our Spear 2, our Sword 2 and 5, and then our Forge 4. Some things I don't like about this build is the lack of mobility. I know I just mentioned that we have chase potential, but we don't really have the same chase potential as a Willbender. We don't have access to teleports, we don't have access to a billion dashes, so we have to be very careful with how we use our dashes to make sure the enemy doesn't get away or doesn't kite us too much. Another thing I don't like about this is how some classes can kite us. And when it comes to classes that kite us a lot, we have to be very careful with what skills we use in order to close that gap. If a ranger or a deadeye is trying to kite you, make sure you use your sword 3 in order to block the incoming projectiles. Make sure to save your 2 and 5 and not use them at the same time, or else you wouldn't have any more teleports. Make sure you're using your Forge 5 properly and not just spamming it, only using it at key times to prevent their bursts from range. And always be prepared with renewed focus when you don't have any other ways of mitigating their damage from range. Other than that, the class honestly feels like a catalyst. It feels like a walking tank that has burst, a bit of mobility, and constant damage and healing. In my opinion, it's very strong, and a lot of other people are saying it's pretty broken. I would honestly agree with them, and that's a bad thing because we just got Luminary, but I feel like it's gonna get nerfed already. Some nerfs that I feel will happen is that Effulgent stands, the barrier we get from it is gonna be lower. I feel like they might even lower the damage that it does because that's a bit, I feel like that's too strong for an ability that already gives a lot of things. Another thing that I think they're going to be nerfing is a Sovereign of Light. I feel like the healing from it might be too much. They might reduce it to 100 or maybe even 800, but we'll just have to see. One more thing I really dislike about Luminary is the lack of build theory that is in it. You can't really make a condition Luminary build because it has no synergy with the Forge or the trait lines. Some of the trait lines are pretty much just useless in WvW. Master at Arms specifically makes no sense to me because it has such bad synergy with everything else. So for now, the Luminary Elite spec seems very one-sided when it comes to WvW, and I'm very let down that there wasn't more build theory and build crafting allowed for us with this Elite spec. Other than that, it's very strong at what it does currently, and we'll just have to see if it still remains strong when it gets nerfed. Now that we have the build explained, let's go into some clips.